gets better every time I hear it. Drums. A little more. Outstanding. Welcome in to Says Who Sports. Thank you for joining us. Hope you are enjoying the day. I'm your host, John Dauphin. Let's talk a better game. And by the way, that music, Hook and Ladder Band, hnlband.com, their community, Hook and Ladder Band, Eric and Michael. Thank you so much. Says Who Sports is your fresh air escape from the stench of sports media, from the daily slop they serve you, including lazy reporting and contrived controversy and forced narratives at every turn. Pick a day, pick an example. Like recently, hey, look at this big story. The player of the year in college basketball, Zach Edey of Purdue, supposedly calls out a coach who overlooked him in recruiting. So let's stir the pot of emptiness because we are incapable of doing the quality work it takes to create real stories with real impact. And so let's continue being sloppy and bait the sports fan with our so-called controversy. Never mind that Zach Edey, in the very next sentence at that press conference, called Rick Barnes, who he was referring to, of Texas, a hell of a coach. A hell of a coach. Hello? That wasn't mentioned, was it? Easy to leave that out. Or when a so-called industry leader in sports news lead their prime time coverage of the women's basketball Final Four with a breathless Caitlin Clark wanted to go to UConn and play for Gino Auriemma, but Gino refused to recruit Caitlin. Stop the madness. That is an incredible player, of course, and a coach who has won national championships like nobody's business, who have great respect for each other. That's it. Maybe you want to ask about their respect for each other and learn some things from their answers. But no, slop media doesn't want to talk about that. Or the so-called writer, for example, for the LA Times recently that seemingly tried to be cute in a poorly written piece about the so-called, according to him, sweethearts of UCLA in the saintly shadows of John Wooden? What? Versus and this was the writer's, gotta say it, a man called Ben Bulch, his self-professed awful attempt at alliteration, I can help you, Ben, in describing LSU players as dirty debutantes before a Sweet 16 matchup. Wow. Well done, Ben. Except it wasn't. And then, of course, the public backlash to that. And then, of course, Ben said he was so sorry. It goes on and on and on. They are taking you for granted. Have taken you for fools for a long time. Think they can force feed you that pablum and you'll keep choking it down until eventually you think, well, it's not so bad. Click, click, click. Worse, possibly the worst, is that you actually begin to parrot it to others, to your friends, as if it's true or has any value or is anything other than a waste of time. It's embarrassing. It's unacceptable, and we think you deserve better. That we includes my frequent co-host, a man who hates mayonnaise, even the sight of it, and who for some reason was hurting badly when Chris Holtmann was fired a couple of months ago as men's basketball coach at Ohio State. We differ drastically on our opinions about mayonnaise and Chris Holtmann, a man who patrolled center field for Indiana University way back when. Phil Dauphin. Phil, come on in, sport. What's on your mind?
I was deeply hurt with Chris leaving Ohio State. He's at DePaul now. I've spoken with my wife, Lisa, and asked her how much money we have in our checking and savings accounts. I'm going to try and pull together some fundage and see if we can't get him back here. No disrespect to Diebler. No disrespect to Diebler.
Not wow. Wow, yeah. Phil, not just, I thought you were going to maybe, help him with a few bucks. I mean,
nope.
Ohio State cut him and still had to pay him on the contract, I assume. But I thought you were going there, and you say, no, we're going for the rehire Holtmann for re-election. Wow.
He didn't have enough time, John. He didn't have enough time. It was premature. Let's get him back here. That was a 12 to 15-year plan that he had, and he just didn't have enough time.
That's unbelievable, Phil. And we will get to, we'll touch on the Holtmann thing for a moment, and we're definitely going to touch on the Mayo thing. I think you're being unfair to Mayo. But before we get to that, the response to the recent arrival of Says Who Sports on the scene, on the podcast landscape, has been strong, positive. The show has been received very well out of the gate, and we thank you for that. Please, as always, like and follow the show on Apple, Spotify, Google, on the Says Who Sports YouTube channel. Share it with friends. It's all about those algorithms, all about the algorithms. Also, if you have comments or questions about anything Says Who Sports related, good or bad, like Carl in Kokomo defending his Boilers, or Katie in York, PA, appreciating the arrival of Says Who Sports, send it on over to us at sayswhosports@yahoo.com. We will see it. We will take note. We will respond. Phil may knock on your door, maybe at midnight, 1 a.m., who knows? But we will read it to fellow listeners, if possible. Little profanity, perhaps. Don't go crazy. But you will be heard and read. So, Phil, back to the Holtmann thing for a moment. You say rehire Holtmann in 24. I say good riddance. Respectfully, right? If you can do that. Multiple things can be true at once. Overwhelmed, seemingly from the start at Ohio State. It did not work, with multiple exclamation marks. Just didn't work. Dude did not get it done. Pick a reason. Doesn't matter to me. Well, so-and-so left. These players left, COVID hit, X, Y, or Z, don't care, gone. Lost the gig, deserved to lose the gig, and we'll see, to your point, if Jake Diebler can get it done. But, Phil, on the Holtmann front, you said, and when I referenced hurting, you were deeply hurt, you said in the immediate aftermath of his dismissal from Ohio State University, you said, I hate to see it when a good man loses his job, or something to that effect. Am I wrong?
No, I did. And I had mentioned to you, I believe, John, we were at Roosters, and I brought that up. That
Shout out to Roosters. We love you.
Yes. I know he's fine financially, but I do not like to hear about or see anyone losing their jobs. And that's part of the coaching, right? That's part of coaching. That's part of playing. Coaches get dismissed. Players get released, traded. I understand that. I just, internally,
Here we go.
It hurts me, John. I won't keep going on. I'll go back to the Mayo.
No, feel free. No, I want to. If this is therapy, if we need to work through your Chris Holtmann thing, no. But I feel you, Phil, and I agree on some fronts. No, nobody in any space wants to see somebody lose their gig, but when it comes to sport and sports fans and followers, especially people spending money, hello. The Schottenstein Center at Ohio State was a shell. I don't know, few hundred people up there, few hundred up there. When it came to men's basketball games, just was not going well. And while I am confident, Phil, that Chris Holtmann is a good man, a good family man, good father, husband, neighbor, all of the above. Again, multiple things can be true. He was overwhelmed, and man, did he underperform in terms of wins and losses and in terms of tournament wins. Gotta have them, baby. Gotta get in. Gotta have them. If not, goodbye.
John, speaking of him going to DePaul, when we were growing up, that program was unbelievably fun to watch. Unbelievably fun. The Blue Demons. Wow.
The Blue Demons and Ray Meyer. Not son Joey, who came later and just drove it into the ground, respectfully, if that's possible. Again, good man. Just drove the program into the ground, in essence. But Papa Ray Meyer with those All-Americans, Phil, including Mark Aguirre. You're right. What a fun team to watch. Last note, Phil, things keep coming to mind on the Holtmann dismissal, the Holtmann debacle, because it was messy. It was a debacle. Didn't have to go down that way. I said for 3 years, right? The better part of 3 seasons, you got to can them, got to get rid of them. Well, who are you going to get? You know, that nonsensical argument. We'll get to that at some point. But on the Holtmann thing, that became a mess. Did I miss something, Phil? Because I believe it became a mess because the soon-to-be gone, outgoing now, in essence, athletic director at Ohio State, Gene Smith, let it linger. And Phil, did not Gene Smith, like a year ago? Maybe two, but certainly recently, gave Chris Holtmann, despite all evidence that said, warning, failure, gave him a contract extension. Am I wrong? Did not Gene Smith do that?
That is what was reported. It was Gene Smith that did that. I would love
Reported.
for us to be able to. I would love for us to be able to have Gene on, talk with him.
Would love it.
I don't know the thought that went into that, but it sure seemed strange at the time, right, John?
It absolutely, Phil, it did. It seemed strange, and you're going, what is this? You know, here's an extension after they had a rally talk, right? Again, as you said, reported. This is what we heard from the Buckeye beat guys, right? Right there close to it. This is actually what we heard, in essence, from Gene Smith and from Chris Holtmann. We rallied up. We had a meeting. We figured out the adjustments. It's going to go this way, and we're positive about it. Did not, was not. And so, you know, the waiting, I think, Phil, the waiting really hurt the program unnecessarily. 3 years, I say, and I know many Ohio State basketball fans would say that's extreme. Maybe in the last year it became obvious. I say no. I'd like to think I saw it 3 years ago, 3 seasons ago, whatever. Buddy's gone. As you said, would love to have Gene Smith in. That'd be an honor, right? Man has seen a whole lot in his years on major program landscape in college athletics. So that's wide open to Mr. Gene Smith. But Phil, on the Mayo front, right? To go back to your hatred of Mayo, and not just, I mean, you don't just dislike it. It's animated, and frankly, I'll say as a Mayo lover, it's ugly. And I say, you know what I'm going to say, Phil? I'm going to say Dukes all the way. Dukes. Used to be a Hellman's guy. Was a Hellman's guy for a long time, Phil. No problem with Hellman's. But when Dukes hit the scene, that was it for me. I'm all about the Dukes, Phil.
John, did you try the Dukes after watching the Duke Mayo Bowl?
No.
The Dukes Mayo
now
Bowl?
stop
no,
it.
You
Stop.
had it before. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Just want to make sure.
No,
Dukes
I understand.
Mayo Bowl.
Yes. Get it all over you, winning coach. Get it all over you. Woo! You would love that, Phil. That would be your dream come true.
John, Kennedy, as you know, my daughter, Kennedy, used to chase me around.
Beautiful young lady. Beautiful young lady.
Thank you. Yes, she is. Used to chase me around the kitchen table after dipping, because she loves mayonnaise, dipping her finger in the mayo jar and would chase me around. That's how much I disdain mayo. No, thank you.
Wow. Was there a time that has it been from the time you were a kid? Because I don't remember. Hell, I can barely remember yesterday, last week. But I don't recall you being that animated in your dislike of mayo when we were growing up. But was it always there? Did you ever like mayo?
Great question. I think
we're trying to bring you big value on Says Who Sports.
Yes.
Phil and Mayo. Stay tuned. He's about to answer.
I think at one point when I was, let's say 10 years old, I liked mayo because I would have it on my Whopper at Burger King. And I think, I will not mention the location. John, we can talk about it later on. I think I got a bad Whopper with some iffy mayo, and that did it for me. Ever since then, no thank you.
I'll be damned. Wow, yeah. I'm learning something too, everybody. I had no idea. You're thinking, right? You're thinking
yes.
A bad Whopper, bad mayo. Ooh, that would do it. That would do it. So you hate mayo, but you'll sure as hell pour sugar ketchup on everything. I mean, you can't get enough of sugar ketchup, right? Pick an item, you're pouring. You're pouring sugar ketchup. I don't get it. Like it's the last bottle ever.
Head to toe, I would cover myself in it, and then take a potato chip and scrape some off and eat it. Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that.
Hey, Phil, that's good stuff. Do you remember the movie? Did you see the movie The Whole Nine Yards from early 2000s? Bruce Willis?
Yes.
Matthew Perry?
Yes.
Bruce Willis is the contract killer, right? There's a lot of comedy to it, a lot of great scenes. I think it's a solid watch. Whole Nine Yards, rest in peace, Matthew Perry, right, Phil? But
yes.
Bruce Willis was a contract killer. Matthew Perry was his neighbor. He was the foil. He was getting into all the predicaments with Bruce Willis and the mobsters hunting Bruce, etc. But speaking of mayo, that's why I mention it. Bruce Willis, if you remember this, Phil, there is a great scene. They're having dinner out, and Bruce Willis, the intimidating presence in the movie, they're out at dinner, and he sent back a burger from his plate, and he tells the waiter, if the burger comes back with any mayo on it, I'm going to come to your house. And then Bruce proceeds to get real vivid in terms of the pain he will inflict on said waiter. But in essence, Bruce said, if there's any mayo on it when it comes back, I'm going to come to your house and cause you a lot of pain. Can hurt you. So, good stuff, Phil. But yeah, the mayo, I mean, you've never thought of hurting anybody when it comes to mayo. You would never do that. You're all about peace and love, and sports. Peace and love and Says Who Sports, right?
And sports. Passive-aggressive is not even in my personality. So somebody wants to slather some mayo on my burger, I'd simply toss it to the side and order another one. That's all.
And move on, right, Phil? That's taking the high road.
Yep.
With your mayo. I like it. But sure. I say Dukes. I say mayo. Bring it strong. My wife, Kim, made a wonderful, they're always spot on. I just can't do it like that. I don't know why you say it's an egg in a pan. Nah, I beg to differ, and we'll discuss that with Kim at some point. Amazing egg sandwiches. And she brings it home for me. She knows it's all about the finish with Dukes. Hell of a day starter, Phil. Hell of a day starter.
John, what type of bread does she use? Is it whole wheat? Is it any type of sourdough bread? What'd she go with?
Ooh, great question, especially sour. I love the sourdough. Who really doesn't, though, right, Phil? Love the sourdough. Been staying away from it for the most part. So, ready for this? This was the lighter keto bread. This was on keto bread. and still it delivered. I've had the low carb bread, still do that. This was specifically keto branded, keto something bread. And man, you put that quality egg on there and that Duke's.
Ooh, nice.
And I was in heaven, but I'm not a big whole wheat guy. Like, I don't hate it. I don't really dig it. I don't go to it often, Phil.
Take it or leave it. Doesn't matter.
Ooh, exactly. Take it or leave it. Well, Phil, this is episode 4. We are getting out of the gate strong. And again, we have a power show for you, we think, featuring a conversation with Leigh Steinberg. A power conversation with perhaps the most famous sports agent of all time. Think the classic Jerry Maguire character played by Tom Cruise. In Jerry Maguire, Phil, think, show me the money. Show me the money. How many times, Leigh will tell us, and I'm sure it's thousands and thousands and thousands of times, has Leigh Steinberg, the one and only, heard show me the money out somewhere, airports, whatever. But Phil, let's see. Leigh Steinberg signed and represents a superstar named Patrick Mahomes. Leigh Steinberg represented a Hall of Famer named Troy Aikman. A Hall of Famer named Steve Young. Too many Hall of Famers to mention now, and that's just in the NFL, right, Phil? Leigh has represented a variety of megastars, the highest performers in sports. We look forward to talking with Leigh Steinberg about that and about the NFL and NIL. NFL, NIL, Phil. I say no 3-letter entities in sports getting more eyeballs and attention than NFL, NIL. Phil, think of the power and money behind those 6 letters. Woo!
It's amazing and beautiful.
Absolutely. Perfect way to put it. Amazing and beautiful. Woo, bringing some serious punch too. Super agent Leigh Steinberg will no doubt have some unique perspectives and will join us to share in a few. Phil, great time of sports, right? As you and I talk, the Masters, the final round is in motion. We had the glorious March Madness for a few weeks, capped, Phil, by mighty UConn and Coach Dan Hurley winning a back-to-back, Phil, a back-to-back.
Back-to-back in today's environment, John.
Boom!
Boom. Ooh. And
back. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say also, enjoy the moment, right? We talked about it on the last podcast. Enjoy the moment. Forget about, well, can he do 3 in a row? Can they three-peat? Forget about that. Enjoy the fact that UConn back-to-back national champions, and they did it in a strong manner, John.
Amen, Phil. Well said. Strong fashion. The mighty, we can call them that now, mighty UConn Huskies of Dan Hurley going back to back. As Phil said, today, tough thing to do. We're not talking about John Wooden with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar towering over, and no disrespect in any way to Kareem, but we're not talking about 7 in a row, 8 in a row. We're talking about today's era. And actually, Phil, that'll be a good question for Leigh, right? To kind of get his take on doing that now. It's special in any era, but Dan Hurley and UConn going back to back. Big congrats to them. Phil, safe to say now, right? Stores, Connecticut is college basketball central. It all revolves around stores. And Phil, how did you and I know? How are we not surprised? Gosh, heart's hurting a little bit to say it. How are we not surprised that, yes, it's true, yet another Big Ten team, Phil, comes up short for the big hardware in college basketball. It just goes on and on for that conference in basketball. Phil, coming up short. They get to the Final Four often, many times one team, a few times they've had a couple of teams, many times one to the final. 24 years now, Phil, 24 years and counting on the men's side in the Big Ten. Likely almost as long, if not as long, on the ladies' side. But the Big Ten basketball thing, maybe next year, and maybe not. Maybe Dan Hurley and UConn shut the door on everybody, Big Ten included, and say, we're going triple, baby. Triple dipping next season. But Phil, Big Ten, short again.
John, do you think this was the Big Ten's best opportunity to bring home the hardware? The best. Do you see anything that would tell you in the next 5 years that there's a better opportunity than what the Big Ten had in Purdue and them bringing it home this year? Zach Edey, monster. Absolute monster. And kudos to him. What a great
Zach
year.
Edey, right?
Yep.
Zach Edey, what a monster in the best way possible. Did everything and then some. Phil, do we say, great question by you, I want to answer that. Do we say overwhelmingly he carried the club? I mean, they had other weapons. Braden Smith, that guard, boom. But where was that in the championship game? Nowhere. Nobody stepped up to help the big man.
Oh, I think he absolutely carried them, especially in the semifinal, right?
Ooh,
I mean, just absolutely carried them. And we talked about it on the last episode, John. The scratches, the bruises, the marks on his arms, his shoulders, the biceps from just getting hammered every time he had the ball, and he delivered in a huge way for them.
Absolutely, Phil. Well said. He delivered. He game after game after game. Regular season, lead him to the Big Ten championship. Okay, what you going to do following that 215 disaster last year? No, 116. Why can't I get that straight? Fairleigh Dickinson, 116 last year.
Yes. As
Carl in Kokomo, Phil, back to, let us know what you think. It says Who Sports at yahoo.com. If you have a correction, thoughts, whatever. Carl in Kokomo set us straight on that with it was not. I think I said St. Peter's, right, Phil? And Carl in Kokomo, right there for his Boilers, said, no, we did not. We were not taken down by St. Peter's in a 215. That was Kentucky. The previous year, we were taken down in a 116. I don't know that you want to point that out, Carl. We're with you and so glad you're with us. But anyway, so they come back, right, Phil? They make it back. We say, okay. And you and I talked about this in our lead into March Madness when we were getting ready to speak with the Naismith Hall of Fame coach, Bob Hurley Sr. That episode, we'll talk about that in a moment. But you and I said, it hurts. You got to kind of laugh instead of cry. But on the Big Ten's behalf, it hurts. Purdue's back now. Maybe they can make the run. And as you said, is it the best opportunity for the conference? They make the run. They get there. They get to the 4. They get to the championship game. Dun, 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 dun. Phil, how does the Price is Right, forgive me, is it still on the air? I don't know. I remember for decades, but I haven't known for a long time. If they're still on the air, but it was Dun, 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 dun. It just died when the dream died, right?
Yes.
The big prize.
Yeah. I don't get a chance to watch any daytime television these days, but I believe that was the sequence because at the end it was, right?
Yes. Yeah, Phil, exactly. When it was going well, it was dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. And then when somebody just clanked it, in a hoops case, clanked it, we'll say, and the big prize was not won, the big trip, the car and the trip, whatever it was, Phil, dun 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 dun, like down the drain. So for the boilers,
it was the flame out, right?
Yes, yes. And no disrespect, Matt Painter got him there. Zach Eady, big man, and as you said, Phil, let's call it. You know what? Let's call it this. And if this has been out there, then I'll borrow it. Beg your pardon, but not really. But I'm gonna say, we're gonna say, hack a Zach, right? We had hack a Shack.
Love it.
Hack a Shack. Thank you. We'll say hack a Zach, and as you pointed out, scratches, cuts. I mean, people gouging out, just arms, all sorts of heavy-duty contact, trying to somehow stop the unstoppable inside. Although he did not have, it was just tough. No help in the championship game. A shame for him, but man, Phil, even if he had help, right? Dan Hurley's Huskies, deep, strong, boom from downtown, Castle, Newton, Cam, oh my gosh, just unbelievable weapons. Samson Johnson coming off the bench, flying. I mean, just power slams, ripping boards, on and on. But what a club, Phil. Deep, too strong, right? So who knows if Edie does get help, if they can do anything about it.
Too deep, too strong. And John, you hear analysts or you hear people say it all the time. That guy plays this game the right way. Right? Baseball player, football player, basketball player. The UConn Huskies under Coach Hurley, doesn't it seem like they play the game the right way? It's just fun to watch.
Great point, and absolutely. Yes, they play the game the right way. Discipline. Now we know they'll go through, 3, 4, 5 minute spells where they jack threes and they're clanking them. Is that their MO? Was it throughout the season? No, they hit their solid percentage of those. But they would go through spells like that here and there in the tournament. All teams with scoreless spells for a few minutes here and there, they had those. But you're absolutely right. Never did they fail to defend. The Huskies defend, Phil, up on you and just locking down and ripping the boards. If you didn't make the first one, forget about it. They were cleaning the glass. Do they still say that, Phil, as you and I used to say that? I mean, that was accepted back when in terms of rebound reference. Cleaning the glass. Can we still say that? Or no? I don't know.
I think we can. You and I
just did, right?
Every coach that we had growing up said it. And even watching games, I believe, college games, I've heard it. We've heard it. Let's say it. Let's put it on a shirt. Good. Let's do it. Yeah.
Yes, Phil, clean the glass. And then some UConn, maybe Samson Johnson, hey, little endorsement deal. Samson Johnson, clean the glass. Yeah, forgive us, and we missed him terribly this college basketball season and have in large amounts in the last few years. The amazing Dick Vitale, right, Phil? The amazing Dick Vitale. So much has that man brought to college basketball at large, communities, cancer, millions and millions of dollars raised. Just an amazing man and quintessential ambassador for so many years for college basketball. Phil, maybe I'm mistaken here though, but didn't Dick have was one of his references or his Vital Awards, forgive me for not knowing the exact name, but didn't he have a Windex glass cleaner award? Speaking of cleaning the glass, it was rebounds. Am I wrong? It sounds right.
I feel like he did. The exact name, as you said, I do not remember, but I believe he did. Yeah.
Gotcha. And
Dickie
Phil,
V.
Dickie V strong, heal however possible. We all love you and we missed you this year. Can't wait to see you back. And Phil, on the ladies' side, to put a bow on that, Dawn Staley's Gamecocks, historic, finishing in strong 38-0 fashion. Phil took on and hammered all comers, including Iowa and Caitlin Clark in the championship game. And Phil, speaking of that defense we talked about, and relentless and waves coming at you deep, 9, 10 deep, those freshman guards, right? Dawn Staley's Gamecocks, too strong. National championship hardware, Phil. The third, right? Third for Dawn Staley, Phil. Wow.
John, 38-0, and they weren't playing as we have some friends that used to play Sisters of the Poor. They were playing some unbelievable competition, some unbelievable teams and players. 38-0. Well done. Well done.
Well done indeed. Congrats to Dawn Staley and that team. And Phil, what struck me, they're young. Speaking of those freshmen, they have amazing talent. They're loaded. I mean, loaded. Camila Cardoso, most outstanding player, I think they call it the MOP of the tournament. Nonetheless, a force inside, right, Phil? Camila Cardoso doing her thing, crucial buckets and bounds, kicking it out for the three. Amazing. But they got it done. As you said, in the competition, I mean, hell, LSU, right, Phil?
Yeah.
Fierce battles in the SEC, getting it done, hammering through the tournament. Congrats to Coach Dawn Staley and those Gamecocks.
Absolutely.
And by the way, we talked with Bree Hall, starting guard, and a cool customer on the court, a calming influence, according to Camila Cardoso as well, for those national champion Gamecocks, 38-0. We spoke with Bree Hall last episode. If you haven't yet seen it, check it out. Nuggets in there. Bree had a lot to say, Phil, right? And she shared, she went through struggles early season. Even though they were undefeated, the club was hammering. She was fighting her own battles with emotions and figuring out the best way through those. They figured it out. And as she said, it took work. They got it figured out. And big props to her. She stayed strong, got stronger, contributed in a big way through the tournament run, and she's going to get another ring. She got a ring a couple years ago with Dawn Staley. She's a junior at South Carolina. So Bree Hall, if you haven't heard that conversation, the conversation we had with her last episode, think you'll enjoy. We spoke with her after the national championship, and our conversations in those first couple of episodes, Phil, right out of the gate, with Naismith Hall of Fame coach Bob Hurley Sr., father of Dan. The response to that episode has been amazing. And Coach Hurley Sr., right, Phil? He got seemingly almost as much TV time in the seats as son Dan.
It was great to see. And he did, you're right. He got almost as much time as his son Dan. It was great.
Seeing Dan's, just seeing that appreciation for his dad after each of these last two national championships, each of them pictures holding the trophy together with Coach Hurley's wife, Chris. Great stuff for the Hurley family, the winning family in March. They do not mess around. And when we spoke with Coach Hurley Sr., it was March and it was time to go. And he was locked in, Phil. As a dad getting ready to make the tournament run, Coach Hurley Sr. was locked in, right? So check out that episode out of the gate. A lot of things Coach Hurley had to say. And then our conversation with the one and only Gene Steratore, the authoritative TV voice of breaking down the official reviews, the replays of key calls during the NCAA tournament on CBS and Partners. Hell, Phil, same thing. Gene got almost as much run, certainly his voice did, through the tourney as the Hurley family. His voice was ever present. It was a beautiful thing, Phil.
It was ever present, and we've mentioned we're so grateful for those three individuals. Take time and talk with us. We learned so much from each of them, but just, again, so thankful, so grateful for them taking their time. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. So thankful to them during a hectic time of the year, winning time for each of them. Gene Steratore, Coach Bob Hurley Sr. in that initial episode, and Bree Hall of national champion South Carolina last week. Check those out if you haven't seen them. A lot of nuggets in there, and we can all learn. So we did a lot of things, learn some things from those, as you said, Phil, that took their time, and those three doing it at a high level on our episodes right out of the gate. Phil, speaking of the Masters, that's happening right now. Will Scotty, I've not looked at the leaderboard in a few, will Scotty Scheffler finish? You know, the dominant player on the PGA Tour the last couple of years, certainly in terms of consistency. Will Scotty finish? He finished at Augusta in 22, 2 years ago, right? Will he finish again? Another green jacket, another major? Will he find a way to get it done on the turn, the last round at Augusta? We're going to find out shortly.
Yeah, can't wait to see. And John, I don't know if you know this, but Scotty, he can't stand mayonnaise either. Does not care for it, will not have it on any
You're kidding me.
Food item that he eats. Nope.
You're kidding me. Wait a minute. Cut. We're going to hash this out, buddy. You're coming to me right now. Are you kidding me? You're telling me Scotty Scheffler says no go on the mayo?
No go on the mayo. Yep.
Okay, that's why you're feeling big and bold, because you have big Scotty Scheffler rolling with you on the no mayo. Nice nugget, Phil. We'll see if Scotty brings it home. Who will it be? Morikawa again? We'll find out shortly. Phil, did you know that after 1 year of possessing the green jacket, each Masters winner has to return it to Augusta?
I did not know that. I did not know. I have here's a news flash. Here's a tidbit for you. So I was reading yesterday different facts about Augusta and the Masters, and there was an individual 11 years ago in a thrift store in Canada stumbled upon a green jacket, Masters green jacket, bought it for $5. It later sold at auction for $140,000. How it got there, who knows? So somebody did not return it, right? Ends up in a thrift store in Canada and was bought for $5. Amazing.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
See, we try to bring value, friends. We try to bring value. It says Who Sports. You never know exactly from which angle it's coming, but it's going to be there. We hope. We hope you think so. But what a nugget there. Wait a minute. $5, you're telling me in a Canadian thrift store, somebody found, you're saying this was a legit green jacket.
Was later authenticated and auctioned for $140,000 is what someone bought that for. Now, I don't want to call anyone out, and John, we do not want to call anyone out, but I have to wonder if Mike Weir, Southpaw, perhaps forgot that while in Canada, or something happened, maybe a poker game that went bad. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just hypothesizing on what happened.
Phil, that is intense speculation. Proceed with caution. We will. Did something go down? Was that, in fact, Mike Weir's? And by the way, lefty Mike Weir, right? He was a lefty.
Yes.
Fellow lefty.
Yes.
Boom. Yeah, I hit him like Mike Weir used to. Hit something, not a golf ball. I don't know. But, wow, Phil, $5 Canadian thrift store, authenticated, sold for almost $150K. What a story. Unbelievable. Yeah, I heard, that's great stuff. I heard that you can, and again, we stand to be corrected, wide open to it, but I heard that the winner can keep the jacket for a year till the next Masters, and then it goes back to Augusta for good, only then, from then on, to be worn on the lush grounds of Augusta, Phil. So I believe it. I mean, I don't think we're gonna. If we had the honor, can you imagine taking a look? I don't want to sound strange because it's all full respect. Taking a look at Jack Nicklaus's closet at home. But I'm just saying, I don't think there are six. Didn't he win 6? I don't think there are 6 green jackets hanging in Jack's closet, right? You can't. I don't know.
When it comes to Jack, I think all bets are off the table, John. I don't. It's Jack Nicklaus. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? What am I saying? You're absolutely right. It's Jack. It's the Golden Bear, Dublin, Ohio's finest. And that memorial stop, the memorial tournament stop on the tour is coming soon. It's a beautiful time of year. But you're absolutely right. What am I thinking, Phil? Thanks for just getting me right. It's Jack freaking Nicklaus. It's the bear, the Golden Bear. And if he says, I don't care what your rules are, I'm taking them home and I'm keeping them at home. Well, Jack, we think it'd be best. I told you I'm taking it home. So
I'm taking it home.
You're right,
I want
Phil.
my
Jack
grandchildren.
can say that. Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Who's going to stop him? No.
Who's going to stop Jack? You're absolutely right. Who? It wouldn't be right to stop Jack. I'd like to. Don't even think about it. Yeah. Jack.
No.
So Jack was 6 of them. Maybe they're in the. I'm curious. Actually, Phil, now that I think about it, a few miles from us here in Columbus, Ohio, Jack Nicklaus, Golden Bear Central, I'm guessing at least one of those 6 is framed and hanging in his museum at Ohio State. Have to be, right? Just one of?
Would have to be, I would think. Or maybe just the arm of one of them.
The arm of one. That's all they could get? Right. Tattered. I like it. Maybe one of the grandkids when they were young pulled at it. Maybe you're onto something, Phil. I like it. Maybe that's the one hanging in the Nicklaus Museum. We got to be determined, right? But by the way, Phil, again, we're trying to bring value. Perhaps you heard this. I recently heard this. And I'm not certain if it's still the case, but I know that for many years it was absolutely the case that the famed green jacket of Masters lore has been for many years made and may still be made, again, lips are sealed, in Cincinnati, Phil, by a company in Cincinnati. I won't mention the name or the owner of the company for obvious reasons. The Masters is tight-lipped. The owner, this man, again, know his name and the company, tight-lipped. Let's just say that upon multiple inquiries in recent years, recent history, by the Cincinnati Enquirer, he all but confirmed all but confirmed.
Wow.
And confirmed by the deferral, Phil, to Augusta. I can't say anything. You'll have to talk with them. Boom. It's done. And it's a thing. Has been made. The famed, fabled green jacket of Augusta. One will be a new winner, or maybe a repeat winner if it's Scheffler, right? If he gets it done again today, but a winner will slide on that green jacket today. Is that jacket still made, Phil, in Cincinnati? The tailor that creates those distinct beauties is based in Cincinnati. Some Cincy love, Phil, some Cincy love there. An hour and a half down I-71 from us. Are they still making the green jacket for the Masters? But they have for several years. Wouldn't it be awesome, certainly interesting, to be privy to that contract, Phil? What's that all about?
I was just getting ready to ask. Any backdrop from how that developed? If there was a relationship in place between the tailor and somebody from Augusta, or if there was a sales rep for that company that was able to secure that contract. It'd be fascinating.
Be fascinating. I'm with you. I don't know if we're ever going to know. I don't know if we'll ever know, but I do know Cincinnati has a place in the making, had a place for years, perhaps still does. I'm saying still does. That's my take. In the making of the Masters green jacket. And Phil, it's a glorious time of year. The Masters today and this weekend. We just came off 3 weeks of beautiful March Madness. So sports bars across the country have been jammed. I mean, humming, energy, drinks flowing, money, big wagers happening, all of the above, right? And March Madness finished, the Masters picked up, perfect sports calendar rhythm, right? So thousands and millions, we'll say millions, right, of people, cumulative, have over the last month poured into, and many sitting there now, right, watching the final round of the Masters, maybe played a round earlier, that 19th hole's being spent at a table in a bar, sports bar, okay, sports bar, we're going to get to this, so-called sports bar, having a couple cold ones or a few, and watching the best do it at the Masters. Phil, the sports bar thing. We have to hit this. You and I have talked about this many times between us over decades. We are particular. We don't appreciate, I'm just going to be kind and say BS when it comes to so-called sports bar thing. So Phil, last Monday, speaking of the national championship game, UConn-Purdue, a friend asked me, I was going to watch it at home, asked me, especially with a 9:15 tip, gosh, Phil, getting older, tired, I got to get to bed. Yeah. Yes, tough. But a friend says, hey, do you want to get together and watch it at X Sports Bar? I said, you know what? Yeah, I'll get out. Let's do that. I get there first. He gets there a bit later, but I get there first, plenty early, order some food, and I wanted to make sure we're sitting at the bar. I chose seats at the bar. Solid TV setup. I wouldn't even say great in that regard. This is a well-known, a chain of so-called sports bars, chain locations across Greater Columbus, right? And I see the TV set up, and there were 2 or 3 of double-digit number of TVs, Phil, that had the pregame on for the national championship UConn-Purdue game. They had the pregame on. Now, I will say it was on just a few screens, one in front of me, that's why I sat there, that we were about 25 minutes pre-official broadcast, pre-9 p.m. when they come on and we get to the starting lineups, national anthem, all the game on stuff, right? But it was close enough. It was way close enough for them to get it and get the games on the screens and then get the volume turned up. Phil, 2 Chainz, I love 2 Chainz. I'm a big fan of 2 Chainz, right? I listen to plenty of 2 Chainz. But this was national championship night. It's go time. Terribly close to the official broadcast. And by the way, this pregame coverage, they're showing on the screen Bobby Hurley. Not Coach Bob Hurley Sr., Bobby Hurley, NCAA all-time assist leader, still back-to-back, speaking of back-to-back champion with Coach K at Duke, talking about brother Dan and Father Bob and the amazing Hurley family thing. And I'm watching it, I'm going, man, it'd be great to hear it. Well, guess what? Not only could I not hear it, I couldn't even read it because, hello, no closed captioning. Like, Phil, unbelievable. No closed captioning. Where is the consideration, respect for even that thing, right? In a so-called, and they call themselves, they brand themselves as, that's their thing, a sports bar. Phil, it was a mess. And just to wrap that up, do you know that it took another tap from me on the manager who I'd met and tried to get things in place. Meanwhile, I had a guy sitting next to me at the bar. Place was far from full, a known sports bar. Nobody cared in Columbus, Ohio. You know, they have their Big Ten boilers even on the screen. If you're a conference guy, Big Ten, they knew what was coming, I think. But nobody cared, but I cared. And my friend who was going to be there shortly cared. We wanted game action, volume, get lost in it, absorbed by the big game, right? Nothing. And I had a guy next to me, Phil. Sorry, I'm on a roll. I'm almost done. Sorry. Apologize. A guy next to me, while I'm talking to the manager and going, okay, can we get... And he's going, what's going on? What's happening? Is there a game on? And I go... I was respectful, of course. I felt like I was from another planet. I'm going, what do you mean? Do you see any of that? And if not, that's okay. It's Monday. I mean, I was patient. I said, oh, it's the national championship game. It's Purdue, gave them a Zach Edey thing. UConn going for the back-to-back, gave them that thing. Oh, okay. And he checked right out. Wanted nothing to do with it. Went back to his, I don't know, over crispy wings, whatever it was, his soup. I think it was actually soup for him, Phil. But the manager, get it right. I got you covered. Phil, he says, I got you covered. Going to turn up that volume shortly. And then it's official time. Friend shows up. It's 9 p.m., just after the official broadcast. Game broadcast had started, Phil. Nothing. And I'm just going, you got to be kidding me. My friend instantly notices, what are we doing? It's go time. Where's the volume? 2 Chainz, etc. Still pumping. Again, no disrespect. Love 2 Chainz. That's a great pregame pump up, but not there, not then. So, manager's missing it. Can you believe this, Phil? You know where I'm going. We get to tip time. Then it's tip time. We get through the national anthem. No closed captioning, no anything. Volume down, 2 Chainz. We get to the tip. We get about 3 minutes into game action when this manager of this so-called sports bar, sorry, I'm finishing the roll and I want your take. I'm bleeding from this, right? Emotionally, this so-called sports bar, it took them 5 minutes into the game to get the volume turned up, and then Phil to bring it all home. It's the perfect talk about prices right. Perfect fitting. He turns on the volume. The music goes off. The volume comes on, and it's at such a level just enough to annoy you. Couldn't even hear it. Couldn't make it out. If everybody in that so-called sports bar had stopped talking and nobody was talking, you still would have barely been able to hear the volume. Phil, it was a rated F, as in flunk, failure, effort from a so-called sports bar across the board. Thank you for your patience, letting me share that. It's important to have those details for any of us that care about what is, or obviously in so many cases isn't, a sports bar. Take it, Phil. And thank you.
I am so sorry that you had to go through it, because it is so frustrating as a sports fan, and we've talked about it for so many years. The places, we don't label them as sports bars, they label themselves as sports bars.
Yes, thank you.
And when you go in, whether with a group of people or one other person, and you're looking forward to spending some money, having a couple beers, libations, some food, and the volume turned up on not just a game, the game, and being able to watch it, it's
Boom.
as we've said, John, it's unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. And you want to hope against hope that this place is going to be different from that place. The next place is going to be different. And it seems to be just a sick pattern of the same things. Volume's not turned up. Maybe only one TV out of 22 are turned to the game. You've got cornhole tournament over on this TV. I mean, it's so bad. For any of our listeners, if you know of a true sports bar, and our listeners will know, just as you said, what we are referring to, a true sports bar, please email us. I would love to know. I know one, maybe that's within 40 miles that I would say is a true sports bar, but I don't always want to drive 40 miles with my buddies to watch the game when I should be able to watch it. A stellar place. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. And I'm sorry for the rant. Reiterating.
Oh gosh,
John.
Please go. Please preach.
It's
preaching.
It's sick and it's unacceptable, and it needs to change. That's all. Just change it. Otherwise, hey, I've got a heck of a TV mounted on the wall at my house, right? A nice couch. I don't have to spend $60 or $70, but we want to. We want to experience that with other fans. So,
isn't it reasonable to want to and expect to get something?
I think it's more than reasonable. And, hey, John, good for you for being patient with the gentleman who asked what was going on. What's going on? Is there a game?
Phil, coming from another planet, no idea. I don't even know if he'd ever seen the response. Seemed like he'd never even heard of anything called basketball. Forget about college or national.
Tough.
Seemed like never. And this was, he understood. It was fluent English. It was, we were good with all that. He understood, but he didn't,
Right.
That's okay.
Well, the music playing, even if it wasn't the NCAA championship game, there are 20, 25 TVs spread throughout a sports bar, right? Different sporting events. Maybe somebody's there to see the Buffalo Sabres. I don't know, right?
Right.
You don't know what somebody's there to watch, but you would like to be able to hear it instead of listening to Fleetwood Mac. Just let me hear what is going on. Yeah, maybe it is too much to ask, John. Maybe it is.
So well said, Phil. Absolutely. I appreciate you feeling my pain, and I feel yours, and we have felt it together for decades when it comes to so-called, and we know we're not alone. We know you out there. I've heard it from others over the years. We have the disgust, if nothing else, just kind of sadness, just like going, really? You're a sports bar. You see it on how many businesses, Phil, do we pass in any given day? If you're out and about in a car, if you're traveling, if you are traveling, if you're in another city looking to get a bite, maybe watch a game, get a good vibe. I don't know, but how freaking hard is it for sports, so-called? Again, if you're going to put that in your brand, in the name of your business, then by golly, get it done. Get it done. And stop shortchanging people who care. There are so many bona fide sports fans, Phil, like us. So this isn't just about us, right? This is, again, trying to bring value. And as Phil said, we would love to hear from you, our friends, about the sports bar thing. like Phil said, having to drive miles and miles because you know of one that's an oasis in a wasteland of, I almost said it, wasteland of wasteland of waste, just a wasteland, right? It's just unacceptable. Where are the sports bars? And I mean true sports bars. And like you said, Phil, certain basic things. For the love of God, get closed captioning on. If you're going to fail at the rest, get the closed captioning on. It's not hard. Pay attention. Know your product. If you don't, then close the door. Turn the lights off. Go out of business. Frankly, I hope you do. I hope you do. I know, like Phil said, you don't want to see good people lose a gig. It's not meant in that way. But if you're going to call yourselves this, then you be that. And you do it well.
Well, John, and you almost said it. You said wasteland of. I was going to jump in and just ask our listeners to think of Andrew Dauphin in Shawshank Redemption, when he had to crawl through for freedom. Now, we just want freedom to be able to go to a sports bar, not a sometimes sports bar. Give us an all-the-time sports bar. That's all.
Go, Phil.
That's
go.
it.
Yes. What do you say to that? I got a chill there, Phil. Andy Dufresne in the amazing Shawshank, crawling through, what was it, Phil? The length of 4 football fields, I think it was. It was football fields, as Morgan Freeman narrated, 400 yards of foul-smelling blah, blah. Yes! You nailed it. That's what we feel like we've had to crawl through for decades, trying to find a so-called, a real, legit sports bar. So, sports bar owners, wannabe owners, you're on notice. Get your Andy Dufresne crawl, foul-smelling thing together, or don't even think about it. If you don't have it together, shame on you, and you can do better. Sports fans deserve better. Get the game on, get the volume up. Get it up. And we're just getting started. We'll come back to the sports bar thing. We'll revisit because it's unacceptable. They are, a strong one is so few and far between. And Phil, last note on that, my son-in-law was sharing with me last night that in Phoenix, I think it was Phoenix or suburban Phoenix, there is I'll save the brand name, but it's a household brand on the edgy sports front thing. We'll leave it at that. Only a few suspects there. Pretty easy to figure out. But they have a large sports bar, for lack of a better term. That's what they're pitching. They're entrenched in the business. And they have one in Phoenix. And he said the vibe was great. The talent, and I mean that respectfully, that's an important piece too. Those pieces need to be in place. So the vibe, the setup, the TV position, the right things on from a game perspective, feeling the vibe, except the volume, the music. There was a DJ in the corner pumping house music so loud that he said it was shaking the tables, in essence, rattling your brain, and you couldn't concentrate, let alone on the game you're there to watch. You couldn't even talk to the person next to you, Phil. This is outrageous. It must improve. Sports bars on notice. We'll revisit. You have the final word on the sports bar thing, Phil.
Well,
it's all you.
Let's go back to Andrew Dufresne. John, none of us that are craving a sports bar want to finally get to one and have the stench of crawling through 4 football fields on us. Nobody wants that. Just give us what we're asking for, and it's not anything out of the world. Come on. That's it on sports bars for me. I can't take it.
I know. I'm tapped out, Phil. Even thinking about it, what we've been through, what people have been through, we're going to revisit. And I will say, to bring it home on that, yes, I told my friend leaving at halftime, can't do this for the full game. I've already missed half the action. can't hear the play-by-play, can't hear the squeaking sneakers on the court. You know what I mean? Can't hear all
Right.
the band, none of it. So I went home. I came home to what Kim and I, my wife, Kim and I have called J&K's, John and Kim, J&K's Bar and Grill. Now, I don't even have sports in our chosen name. J&K's Bar and Grill, where the drinks flow right way, the pricing's good, the TV set up, multiples is strong, the volume's turned up. That's what I had to do, Phil. Had to cut it short and get home so I could watch the second half.
You know what? You were better off for doing it. Better off for doing it. And you certainly had better company with Kim, so it worked out.
Amen. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. So we will, as we said, we're not finished with the sports bar thing by a long shot. No way. Just getting started. So if you have thoughts, sayswhosports@yahoo.com. Phil, as we mentioned, our guest on this episode of Says Who Sports is one of the most famous sports agents of all time. Nobody knows the business of sports better than he does. And it's reflected in the billions of dollars, billions he has negotiated on behalf of, again, so many Hall of Fame level clients. He has also experienced some life-changing adversity, heavy stuff, and has battled through it and would say, I believe, he is better for it. So happy to share our conversation with the one and only Leigh Steinberg with you. Here it is, Leigh Steinberg. Enjoy. At Says Who Sports right now is a man who knows what the big business side of sports is all about, who has negotiated billions of dollars worth of contracts for many of the biggest names in sports history. Patrick Mahomes, Troy Aikman, Steve Young, John Lynch, Oscar De La Hoya, who has represented the most number one picks ever in the NFL draft, who had a big influence on Tom Cruise's sports agent character in Cameron Crowe's film Jerry Maguire, a man who has operated at the top of the sports business mountain and been down to the valley of adversity and made his way back in strong fashion. And perhaps most importantly to him, he has stayed true to the advice of his father on taking action and not just talking about it when it comes to trying to improve society. We welcome the one and only Leigh Steinberg. Leigh, it's an honor. Welcome to Says Who Sports.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Phil.
It's an honor.
Leigh, the NFL draft is next week in Detroit. Love that the NFL is taking the big show on the road again. Love the Motor City. You've been in prime position with players at the top of the draft so many times. In 2017, Leigh, you were not at the draft. Instead, you were with your client, Patrick Mahomes, at a party Patrick threw back in Texas. Patrick thought he wouldn't be drafted until at least the second round, second day, maybe the third round, but you suspected differently. You knew the Chiefs were interested. Leigh, please set that scene for us. What was the vibe as far as expectations at Patrick's party that night, and what did you think was going to happen in the draft that maybe no one else did?
So when you represent a top player and have relationships with general managers and owners around the league, you have very reliable information coming from specific teams as to what their intentions are. as long as I tell them I won't cross-fertilize, because as we know, teams don't want their intentions broadcast to the public so other franchises can interfere with their trading or their strategy in some ways, then they'll tell me the truth. So I was pretty sure that there were a group of players that might come before, but that teams like the Kansas City Chiefs and the New Orleans Saints all wanted him. So it looked to me like he would be drafted in about the number 10 position. And my co-agent Chris Cabot had great information coming back. So we were pretty clear that something was going to happen around that 10 spot. So you prepare your client for that. So it's not a surprise. You prepare them for the fact where you could go around 10 and you could go to this position, but if not, the next team up is the Saints, or the next team up is Houston, and they'll take you. So you try to do a pretty good job. Now, when you're sitting with the player, draft time is not real time. That 15 minutes it used to be, now 10 minutes between the picks, is water torture time. Every second seems like a minute. Every minute seems like an hour. Drip, drip, drip. And so the tension ratchets up in the situation, because notwithstanding how much preparation I've done, it's still not a reality. And then all of a sudden it leads up to the player being drafted, and boom, it's euphoric joy. And it's the fruition of all those years of practice since Pop Warner and high school football and college football. And what happens now is some players choose to stay home for draft night. They might have it sponsored by a commercial company. So we had a couple of players. One was Wingstops. One was Panini trading cards, and then you can invite sister, brother, aunt, college coach, high school coach. You can be surrounded by that whole the extended family that surrounds a player. So you're going to see a number of people not go to Detroit, but stay at home for that reason.
So well said. Wow, great stuff there. Already learning some things. Thanks, Leigh. And so the Chiefs draft Patrick Mahomes in 17, 10th pick overall. And in his first year as the starter, 18, right? They go to the AFC Championship game, lose a tough one at the end to the Patriots. And from there, it's been game on in a historic way for Patrick and the Chiefs. Leigh, you know Patrick well. You know his family well. What do you say about not only what he's already accomplished, but also the way he's done it? I mean, winning is one thing, but what he's done has been crazy. No one could have seen that coming, right, Leigh?
It was pretty clear he's going to be a great player, but it was never clear that that would happen the first year he started. So if you like him on the field, you love him off the field, because he cares about other people. He's got ethics and values. He's got a charitable heart.
Thanks for sharing. Leigh, the league, the NFL right now, is a monster money machine. Dominates as far as attention and ratings, and the TV rights deals are crazy. Teams are getting annual checks from the league for, you would know specifically, over $300 million right now. You don't even have coffee with the NFL, it seems, for less than $1 billion. How have they done it from your unique perspective, Leigh? You know it intimately. How have they built this product of such insane interest? What are the pieces they put together to make it happen, Leigh?
So there was a time in the NFL where every team was getting $2 million as their share of the national TV contract, and they'd gotten that up to $17 million. And the key to the NFL's dominance was the fact that networks looking to build their prime time viewership could use Sunday afternoon to show promos for their prime time shows. And that could build the ultimate value of the network. So they bid what we call loss leader economics, more money in rights fees than they could ever recoup in advertising, to get the fact that once they got up to $17 million, CBS had the NFC. So along comes Fox with Rupert Murdoch, and they bid on the league, and within a couple years they go from the fourth network to the first network. CBS, that drops the contract, goes from the first network to the fourth network, so it has an effect on their other programming. So the next contract was $72 million per team, and the next contract after that was $130, and now last season we were well over $200 million. And in the midst of a tanked economy and the pandemic, CBS and Fox raised their offers by 83%. So it's television revenue that is creating franchise value. Then you have the fact that television grew up with football, and the camera angles, the way it's done, all work really well. Then you have the fact that it's a once-a-week game. So unlike baseball and basketball, every game theoretically matters. And then you've got the fact it's got contact and quick bursts of action which fit American tastes. And they've been greatly helped by fantasy football that's got 40 million people playing NFL fantasy football, by new stadia with luxury boxes and premium seating and jumbo scoreboards and naming rights. And now we have gambling, which is a major change. And you can go into the Washington Commanders Stadium and place a bet while you're buying a hot dog. So the point is, it's been the confluence of all these factors coming together. Cool uniforms, cool merchandising, the ability to have colors and emblems that make sense. But football has come to dominate America. Last year, of the 100 top-rated shows, like 61 of them were nighttime football. And so it's not only the most popular sport, it's the most popular form of televised entertainment.
Well said. Wow. That's a machine for sure. Leigh, what would it take from your perspective to slow down that locomotive? Like when you look out a year, couple years, few years, etc., what caution lights, if any, do you see out there for the league in terms of obstacles, growth? Or does that train keep rolling down that big money track?
Well, we know that bad behavior by athletes doesn't slow it down because there's been a fair amount of that, and it just gets more popular. There are a couple existential threats I can see the growth of football. One is the whole concussion issue. And so I've been holding player health, brain health summit conferences for about 30 years now. Because the reality is that 3 or more concussions create an exponentially higher risk for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, premature senility, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and depression. And so it's a danger every time a player hits another player. So if we can minimize that, make the sport safer, which they're doing by rules changes and by the concussion protocol, and we now have new substances that can help a brain recover from concussion. One's called RTMS, another one is Tommy Shaver's Nestry, and through neuroplasticity they can rebuild the brain. But that would be a threat, because if mothers understood that danger and tell their teenage boys you can play any sport but not tackle football, it wouldn't kill football, it would just change it into a gladiator sport. So that's one. The second is the danger that no one's really factored in from gambling. And how that could happen is you have an athlete in debt to a bookie, and as a way to solve his gambling debt, he shaves performance. Or people close to the game who got gambling problems give inside information to a gambler. So we watch these games, and they're not wrestling because we believe that they're played on an even playing field with the same rules, the same equipment, the same refereeing, and everyone's trying as hard as they can. If you ever had something that raised a question in fans' minds about whether or not games were fixed or games were off, that would be a threat that would kill professional sports as we know it.
Well said. Phil, you have a question?
I do. Leigh, is there a specific owner that you remember that you've negotiated with that has been the toughest or the shrewdest in negotiations?
Well, the toughest, beyond any doubt, is right there in Cincinnati, and that's Mike Brown. I had the first round draft pick of the Bengals in 1987, 1992, 1994, 1995, and 1999. If Mike Brown, if I represented astronauts, Mike Brown would be commissioner of the moon, right? And, he just would say, no, 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 no. So he was very tough. Now, when I had local players, which Kajana Carter was from Westerville, and Dan Wilkinson was from Ohio State, he had a soft spot for Ohio State. And so those went really well. But he was by far the toughest. Today, it doesn't matter so much because for rookies, you have a salary cap. And basically, the contracts are all slotted, so you can't have a team pay less or be out of line. They maximize the slot. There's very little negotiability to a rookie contract. That changes when the player's a veteran.
Thank you.
So well said. Thank you so much, Leigh. Staying with the NFL for another moment, I want to ask you about, and you mentioned, and I thought about it when you mentioned rules changes and safety, etc. And this man, this client of yours, brilliant man, went to Stanford. So big mind, obviously. John Lynch, the Hall of Famer. You represented him coming out of Stanford, safety, drafted in the 3rd round, went on to incredible career, Hall of Fame, maybe for that matter, could have played Major League Baseball too, right? Was drafted by the Marlins in the 2nd round in, I think it was 92 as a pitcher, but continued his iron work ethic and hammering off the field, and eventually, obviously, into the front office, and now GM of the Niners, Leigh. So he came from some affluence, right? His father owned a radio network, and the contrast in a couple ways strikes me. That big mind set up for a strong career, certainly off a football field, but then on a field, just a destroyer in the best way. I mean, just and Leigh, you won't like this term. I used to call it and respect safety and all of that now, but when I was younger, he was a bone cruncher. I mean, he was hurting people, and from the safety of my couch, it was kind of cool to see those guys do what they did. Obviously, safety, the evolution of all necessary. But in terms of John's irony and that mind, and then now, fast forward all the years, in control in the front office of the Niners, Will you share your thoughts about John and what he has accomplished?
So the first time I met John to talk about representation, he and his father said they'd meet me at a Charger game. His father owned a big radio network, and one of the stations broadcast the Chargers. So I show up, and they're get out of a limousine, and I began to see a different picture, that he had come from affluence. He goes to Stanford. He's really bright. You know, is the type of person you think would end up running a hedge fund, right, or discovering the cure for cancer. And the last thing he ever needed was to be in a contact sport, and then to pick a position that was all about smashing people. And the nicest guy off the field, you know, mild-mannered and courteous and everything. There was never any doubt in my mind that he would be a major success. And look, the key to winning in sports is look at, if they were having a draft, they ought to draft owners. They ought to draft general managers. They ought to draft coaches, because the key to winning is having stability at the ownership position, having a front office that masters all the skills, having the rest of it. So good organizations win, and so they've created a culture there that's a winning culture. And he's so shrewd that he can evaluate players, he can evaluate trades, he can evaluate the right coach and the rest of it. And but he was someone predestined for success who went off the reservation and became a smash mouth football player.
Wow, so well said. Thanks for sharing that, Leigh. A movie you'll be forever linked to in a big way, a great way, frankly, I say, is writer and director Cameron Crowe's Jerry Maguire. I have so much respect for Cameron. Of course, Tom Cruise played the role of Jerry Maguire, influenced in a big way by you. And you were a consultant to Cameron on the movie, and you were on set during filming. Leigh, will you talk about the time Cameron spent doing his homework, in essence, with you, in terms of you opening that scene up to him, taking him to big NFL events, the draft, the combine? Please give us a feel for what that time period was like with Cameron as he did his homework and made his notes, and then humanized, if you will, the agent, a stereotypical agent, in a real way, and then for you to see it alive on the screen. Please share your thoughts with us about that.
I think there's a picture over my shoulder on the set with Tom Cruise and Cuba Gooding. Cameron called me up in 1993, and he had gone underground in a high school to do a film called Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which I thought was really funny. And he was a chronicler of a rock scene, like the rock scene in Seattle. So I thought it'd be interesting. So he followed me to the draft in '93, where Drew Bledsoe was the first player picked, and then went up to the press conference with the Patriots and Bill Parcells. He went with me to the league meetings where I was showing off a free agent, Tim McDonald, and he watched me interact with owners. I introduced him to some. He went to a number of football games with me. He came to my Super Bowl party. To two of them, he spent a lot of time in my office, and I told him stories, lots and lots of stories. And then he incorporated with his imagination a script, and my job as technical advisor was to vet the script to make sure you don't think as a true sports fan that the dialogue's phony or the look is phony. It's supposed to be right. And he had me take Cuba Gooding Jr. With me down to Phoenix for a Super Bowl, and I had to put him in role. So he had to pretend he was a wide receiver. He hung out with Desmond Howard and Amani Toomer the whole time. And he had to pretend he was my wide receiver client. And I actually had to show the quarterback in the film, played by Jerry O'Connell, how to throw a spiral, because he had gone to NYU and they didn't have a football program there.
Oh, what a
Wow.
great piece.
So it's been 26 years, I think, and I've never walked into a restaurant or an airport without someone running up to me and either asking me to say 4 words or saying them themselves that start with "Show me the."
Show me the money. Yeah, that's power. And the background of that, Leigh, the show me the money. Forgive me, I'm not aware of the origination of that. Was that something that you had said in your career? Was it something that, based on his homework with you and around the scene, that Cameron just came with himself? Brilliant.
So I mentioned Tim McDonald, who was a free agent at that time, and at one point Cameron went to Tim's room, and Moneyline with Lou Dobbs was up in the background on CNN, and he was asking Tim what he was looking for in an experience, and Tim said, "Well, I'm looking for someone to show me winning. I'm looking for someone to show me some respect. I'm looking for someone to show me money." And Cameron wrote the line, "Show me the money."
Fantastic.
Wow.
Thanks for sharing all of that with us. Want to shift gears and talk some NIL with you, Leigh. College athletes and the name, image, and likeness thing. College athletes being able to market themselves and make money. And I have said recently that, to me, it seems the biggest 6 letters, entities, if you will, 2 entities, 6 letters total, is NFL and NIL. I don't know what's bigger than that on the sports landscape right now, but in terms of the attention and money flow of NIL, Leigh, you have players as young as, I'm going to say 15 years old, teenagers that, speaking of, actually, show me the money, these teenagers, high schoolers, early college, that are saying, maybe the updated version would be, show me the bag, right? A big bag. What are your thoughts, Leigh, about the scene? You've heard it described as wild, wild west, etc., but we're, 2.5 years in maybe? Is it not quite 3? What have you seen and what are your thoughts about it?
So I think this was all the law of unintended consequences, because this never had to happen this way. There were always students on the campus from disadvantaged situations who needed a little more money to live an equal lifestyle with the non-athletes, and they couldn't work during the school year, so they could have solved it easily. For $5,000, someone would have been happier as a student athlete. But the NCAA held on too tight, and then California passed SB 206 in 2020, and that said there could be a marketing agent. Collectives have now formed at every major university of alums that own businesses, and they pool their money, and that money is used in recruiting from high school to college, and that money is used for transfer portal. So it changes everything. First of all, the age that someone would think about making money in branding. As you referenced, 15 years old, branding, and now if they sign a marketing agent and it's the same person that represents them professionally, you'd never get a chance to talk to them. Well, I look for role models and mature players, and so I meet someone when they're a junior in college or a senior. This is a much different scenario, okay? And what it means is that schools with big alumni following like Ohio State and Michigan and Alabama and Clemson and Notre Dame and SC have more of those resources. And so it creates a division where I think the four big conferences will dominate everything because they'll get all the good players and they'll pull away from the rest of basketball and baseball basketball and football schools. And I think the NCAA is on its last legs because those conferences are going to say, like if you're the Big Ten, we can negotiate the TV contracts ourselves. We don't need an NCAA, and we don't need to be sharing revenue with them, and we can create our own rules about recruiting and everything else. So I think it's much more profound in terms of how it's impacted everybody. The whole concept of amateurism, I did an interview over the weekend on the fact that the Olympics is offering track and field athletes who win $50,000 prizes, right? So the whole concept, amateurism was never pure, but the whole concept of having athletes wait to a later time in their life to get compensated has been supplanted by this rush, and there are very few regulations, and the NCAA won't be able to control it. So by not expanding money a little bit, in other words, those athletes would sit on a college campus, they'd see the big crowds, they'd see their jerseys sold in the student store, they'd read about the TV contracts, and they might be sending money home to their parents, and they didn't have the ability to have as nice a place to live or whatever. It wouldn't have taken that much money, but they fought and fought, and this is how it exploded, and I don't think anybody ever anticipated these consequences.
So well said. And to confirm, do you not see it slowing down? Does the snowball just get bigger and bigger downhill?
Yes, it's going to continue to expand because we've seen so much change in sport between conference realignment, where no longer does geography have any bearing on anything. I mean, I went to Cal Berkeley. You can stand on campus and you look out through the Golden Gate at the Pacific Ocean. And now Cal's in the ACC, where the office is in North Carolina on the Atlantic Ocean. What happened to traditional rivalries? What happened to geographical proximity? Gone. You got gambling and everything we said about that. You have NIL. You have explosion of women's sports coming out of the NCAA basketball tournament. I mean, major changes. If Rip Van Winkle had gone to sleep about 5 years ago and just recently awakened, he would be in culture shock.
So well said. So navigating all of that let alone the fan, Leigh, I've maintained that, frankly, I have very little interest in the constant movement. I'm just talking about the dreaded word. I've never cared for the word way before it applied to sports and became a prominent word, portal. I don't like the word, but portal and all the attention to it, all the movement through it. I say the networks in the broadcast should just have a constant scroll or post it on the screen before a game. There's going to be so many people from other schools for X, Y, or Z team. As we navigate that as fans, how do you navigate it in your role as an agent?
So I think one of the things that fans like is stability, traditional rivalries. I think fans like the players staying with the same team the whole time. So I think we have to factor in concepts like that. I always see myself as partly a steward of the game. So my responsibility is much more than negotiating one player or bank book. It's keeping games healthy. It's keeping sports healthy. It's keeping the relationship between fans and athletes healthy. And if I'm not contributing to that, then I'm not doing what's necessary to really help athletes.
So well said. Just a couple more, Leigh. Thank you so much again for your time. Phil, did you have a question for Leigh?
Yes, and Leigh, thank you for being that steward. It's fantastic. The question I would ask, if one of our listeners aspires to become a sports agent, a super agent, what advice would you tell that person?
So we do something called an agent academy, which we do a couple times a year. So first of all, you could go to steinbergspeaks.com and look that up, because we do sessions which train people in how to recruit, how to negotiate, how to brand and market, how to set up a charitable foundation, how to do damage control. And they have exercises and they do all that. But basically, my first tip would be to study psychology and to hone your listening skills. If you can draw out another human being and cut below the surface to peel back the layers of the onion and understand how they feel about family, spiritual values, short-term economic gain, long-term economic, if it's a player, how they feel about being a starter, the quality of the coaching, and list that priority. It's all about getting into the heart and mind of another human being. So you're seeing their greatest anxieties and fears and their greatest hopes and dreams. And if you can put yourself in the mind of another person, whether it's an athlete or a general manager, and see the world the way they see it, then you can navigate your way through. I would study psychology, because the interaction of people, why they're motivated to do what they do and how they'll act is really an important factor. And then get an internship, and you can get one in any area of sports, for a team, a league, a conference, division, or a campus, marketing, media, any of those things will help you. And then put together a resume that is distinctive and helps distinguish you from other people. And then anyone can create a brand today, so that I would tell young people, do you have an opinion on NILs? You want to write an article? Just blog it, okay? Create some distinction for yourself. And then lastly, I'd say get on something like LinkedIn and hit every person in sports, hit every athletic director, every general manager. They're all on there, and the worst they can do is turn you down.
That is fantastic, Leigh. Thank you.
Leigh, you have, I mentioned earlier, you've spent so much time at the top of the mountain, and you also, in the last several years, dealt with the valley, in a sense, when it comes to personal adversity, and went through a much publicized battle with alcoholism, with drinking. It cost you plenty, per your words, from a business and personal perspective. You battled and keep battling. You've come a long way back. So top of the mountain, visit to the valley, rolling back from a tough time, and that has been an inspiration to so many. And what have you learned most about you making it through that time and the process of coming back strong, Leigh?
So in 2010, I crashed, and had to come to terms with the fact that I was powerless over alcohol. And that breaking denial is the first step. So you have to be honest with yourself about the fact that you're not dealing with it correctly and find help. And then if anyone's out there struggling because of problems with alcohol or addictive substances, keep hope. Because what I did was I found a unique fellowship in a 12-step program which I worked. I actually went into sober living for about 10 months. And last month I just celebrated my 14th year of continuous sobriety. And life's a lot happier. But I think part of it's a concept of proportionality. When you're wallowing in that addiction, you lose sight of the fact that I'm not a starving peasant in Somalia. I'm not last name Steinberg in Nazi Germany in the 30s. I don't have cancer. I'm not sick in any way. And my dad brought me up with two core values. One was treasure relationships, especially family, and the second was, can you make a meaningful difference in the world and help people who can't help themselves? So that my career came back is just a cherry on top. What was really important to me was maintaining a sobriety and being a good father.
So well said. Thank you for sharing. And lastly, Leigh, again, thank you so much for taking this time with us. You've long been a believer, and you kind of just referenced it, in not just talking, but digging in and doing the work to affect societal change. And as you've acknowledged, that came from your dad. You've been recognized for it from a philanthropic perspective. It's a crucial part also, right, of your representation of your players. When you said earlier, that right fit, those that are interested in giving back in scholarships, in charities, establishment, etc. Will you share, lastly, your dad's words to you? In particular, I believe 4 key words that he used in talking with you about affecting change.
One of the things was that when you're looking for someone to fix a problem or right a wrong or change something, the tendency is to wait for they or them to do it. You know, the amorphous they, older people, political figures. And he would look at me and he'd say, you could wait forever, son. The they is you. You are the they.
That's it.
So when I went into representation, I asked that players go back to their high school community and set up a scholarship fund or work with the church or Boys and Girls Club. At the collegiate level, a number of players endowed full scholarships and branded with the alums. And then at the professional level, set up a charitable foundation with the leading business figures, political figures, and community leaders on the board to execute a program. So work done, just put the 200th single mother and her family in the first home they'll ever own by making the down payment and having the house outfitted, or Patrick Mahomes 15 and the Mahomies, which helps at-risk kids and the rest of it. You also can use athletes to trigger imitative behavior. So take domestic violence. I was working with Lennox Lewis, the heavyweight champion, and we did a public service announcement that said, real men don't hit women. And that could do more to trigger behavioral change in rebellious adolescents towards how they view domestic violence and treating women than 1,000 authority figures ever could. And so you've got the ability to trigger imitative behavior. And as you said, you can take every societal problem like bullying. You can take pro players and college players to talk to high school players about changing the culture of that high school. And instead of being the bulliers themselves, you can have the athletes put their arm around someone with a hare lip or whatever they're being bullied for and change the whole culture. So basically, we can address every societal problem through the use of athletes, role models, and triggering imitative behavior.
Leigh, we've learned so much, and again, so thankful to you for not just taking the time with us today, but what you've done, the difference you have made. People think super agent and all of these superstars and all of these huge contracts. Certainly that's the case, but again, and to all of that, the difference that you have made in helping others, in trying to help others, is outstanding. Phil,
Yep.
Leigh, thank you so much for everything. God bless you and your family, and stay well.